Hello and welcome to More Than a Lumpy Jumper, the podcast where we talk leadership, life and the lessons we learn along the way. This season, we've been journeying around the wheel of life, exploring how each segment shapes our sense of balance. Because balance isn't about perfection, it's about awareness, noticing where we're thriving, where we're stretched, and where we might need to reweave the threads that connect us. Today, we're exploring being in relationship. The family and friends segment of the wheel is about the people who hold us, challenge us, and help us grow. Relationships with partners, children, friends, colleagues, even the strangers who briefly cross our paths shape who we become. And we are delighted to be joined by Lizzie Beuzeval. And whilst not giving her a job title, we will say that Lizzie's career has spanned senior communication roles across fast-paced industries where language, empathy and clarity are everything. And alongside this, her personal life has evolved too, through marriage, motherhood and the beautiful, messy art of raising 3 children while continuing to thrive in a career. In this conversation, we'll explore the step change that came when Lizzie's world expanded, how her relationships evolved, what she's learning about herself through love and family, and how connection in all its forms continues to shape her sense of balance. Lizzie! Oi, oi, oi!
Wow.
Hello.
Hi, nice to see you. Nice to see
Nice
you.
to
Hi,
see
Lizzie.
you.
How are we doing?
Very good. And of course, this is your first relationship connection with the bridge.
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
I heard you talking all things cats before we actually started coming into this episode. So maybe I should have actually included relationships with furry animals too.
Well, we might
Yes.
have to do that.
I have to do
So,
that as part of
because
our
they're so important, right?
They are. But before we get into all of that, look, I did mention career-wise, and we do say, and you've been here before with me as a guest, that we don't use job titles. So, but I know from a communication perspective that your life from that element has been about understanding people, understanding language, and the relationships that you actually build. So that's one part of it. But then you and I have known each other. We need to try and work out how long we've known each other
Yeah.
as well now. But I didn't really know you from a work perspective. I knew you just as you were shacking up with my brother's mate. And then all of a sudden you were married and there were all of these children around, which is why I thought that you would be like a brilliant person to come and talk about all of that, because your world just changed
Yeah.
so enormously after that. So I'm wondering, with all that said, how would you describe who you are with all of that fabric and tapestry of relationships that you actually have?
Well, I think it would be a cop-out to say busy, because, I think that's possibly one of the lamest answers anyone can give when you ask how they are or who they are. When I was thinking about how you would ask me this question, what came to my mind was I would describe myself as a chaser. So someone who is always looking, doing, thinking, busying themselves. So I would say that is possibly one of the way that how I would describe myself as a chaser. I would say that I am emotionally led. So that for me, you have a real balance between, are you led by your head or by your heart? And the big decisions in my life are generally made by my heart, which probably goes to your point around how we met each other, Bobby, through my husband, Dave, was, best mates with your little bro. I'd also describe myself as someone that's quite responsible. Now, that can be taken in many ways. And it's not like the boring, oh, I'm very responsible and I won't do it. I mean it in that I carry responsibility, as in I feel responsible for probably most things, and I always think when we're looking at how we engage, particularly around work and, with children and families and partners and relationships, I feel really responsible in those, because the way you behave and the way you act has an impact in that broader connection. And if it's not going right, or if it's tough, or if it's going really well, like, look in the mirror and see who it is that's part of that. So I carry that sense of responsibility quite heavily. And that's not a bad thing. But I think what it does is it just positions you, it's your choice. And that for me, like when I think about all of the things that you're trying to achieve in life and in work and in home setup, it's all about having choice. So to have choice, you need to take responsibility for things. To do that, you need to have connections and take in as much information as you can. So yeah, that's how I would describe myself in many, many words.
I love that. And I am curious because I think Bridge probably needs to know quite how you and your husband met. If you would be willing to share that, because I think it's a good story,
It is.
and in terms of the environment, because what we've been saying about the wheel is that with all of the segments that there actually are in the wheel, they are all connected, and so I think that the environment in which you met is an interesting one, especially with the emphasis that you place on responsibility and whether that is something that has grown or whether you've always felt like that and where that was in the meeting of the wonderful Dave.
Yeah. So, well, to put it really straight, he was my ski instructor. And I met him on a beautifully sunny Thursday. And I was on a holiday. So I'll take you back to 2014. I was on a ski holiday with a group of absolutely wild people who are super fun. And I think by the Thursday we had, and this beautiful like rock star chalet, it was really lovely. I think we'd drunk between 14 of us 96 bottles of wine.
Nice.
That didn't include any of the après, none of
Too much
like
of my
the
friend.
toffee vodka, none of that. So it was quite a boozy holiday. So you're young, free, single, responsible only for yourself, I think is probably one of the main points. And I'd been in ski school and I could ski, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I was like, oh, I just need to know how I can get my left turn a bit sharper, this, that, and the other. Anyway, I explained that to my then instructor, who was not Dave. And I said, I just need a bit of help. And he said, look, we're really, really busy. I don't have any time for a one-to-one. But we've got this guy it's his first season and he's got some space in the afternoon. And he said he's got a ridiculous surname. So we just call him Boozy. And I was like, well, sounds like somebody I'd marry. Verbatim. And then I turned up on the Thursday and there he was, looking quite nice. And then we had a great time for 2 hours skiing, nailed my left-hand turn. And then that was it, really. That was that. So, yeah, married my holiday romance.
That's hilarious because I married Mohammed was my boxing instructor. He was
I can't follow that.
He was my boxing coach.
Wow. I would never want to see one of your fights.
Oh no, I'm totally crap. I mean, and he's enormous. Like he's really tall, and I'm not tall. So yeah, we are. And you know, he's fit, and I don't know that I particularly fancied him when I first met him because I was absolutely not interested in having a relationship. But after a while, he just like wouldn't let go, and he stopped training me once we sort of started dating. But even then, I was a bit like, yeah, you know, it's fun. He's handsome, he's young, but yeah, he just kind of hung around for quite a long time. And after a little while, I was like, this guy is really kind and generous and patient and nice. And it was not like any relationship I'd had before where it was all fireworks and wildness and always ended up explosive and then ended up not generally in the best place. And it was just this sort of gentleness, although, you know, you look at him and you wouldn't want to have a fight with him. But he just is.
You clearly did. I mean, you started the other way around by having a punch up with him and then deciding to marry him rather than the other way around.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, but all the time he would laugh. Like I'd be punching and he'd just be chuckling away, and I'd be like, "Fuck off, you rude person!"
Like a fly tickling an elephant. I think, yeah. When I went on this ski holiday, I'd had a breakup from a particularly odious person. I mean, we all have them once. I think we all get one card to play. And I remember going away with my friends being like, absolutely not interested. I don't want to meet anyone. I just want to ski and have a great time. And then, bosh, there you are. Something happened. And, you know, probably because you're not trying to impress or not trying to be funny or be engaged, whatever it might be that you try and be when you're trying to meet someone. Yeah. And then the rest is history.
Yeah.
So where do we go to next with the history of relationships for Lizzie now Beuzeval or Boozy II or however you want to be described? I mean, you know, there was a lot of change very quickly,
Yeah.
wasn't there, in terms
Huge
from that perspective?
Mm.
And that interweaving of what was already a great career and continues to be a great career.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing one of the reasons why I was saying, Bridge, this is the lady we should be talking to, because I just want to see what the fluctuations for you are in that wheel, because you're saying busy, chaser, etc., etc.
Mm.
And yet my sense of you is also very balanced with a lovely family.
Mm.
And I've also had the opportunity and the delight to be back in a working context with you as well, with coming in and doing little bits as well. So I see you in both realms. And so there is, for me, looking inwards, a real balance to it. And so I think that that's why I thought you are a great expert to have on, because there has been all of this stuff evolving for you.
Yeah.
You're
Really
still going with
important.
Gexpert, aren't you, Bobby?
I like Gexpert. I think it's clever. You lot can piss off. I think it's a good word. Everyone I speak to, other than you, likes it.
No,
I
too.
like it. I've never been
it
called one of them. I like it. Yeah, I think it's the balance is a really important thing. And I also think that balance is sometimes a bit of a myth, because you can't possibly balance everything all perfectly, all at the same time in every element of your life. Like, I do think, there is truth to that point where if you've got your life as like 4 cooker rings, you might have 2 on absolute burn and go, and the other 2 might just be simmering away. They're in a good place, but you're just rolling. And I think for me, I do see that in my life, because it is so full that it might be like, I'm just looking at the wheel now. It might be that some days I'm well into doing my physical exercise. I'll go for a good run, I'll walk the dog. And then other days I'll be like, do you know what? I'm just going to not do that today, because what I've learned is to drop the should. You should do this and you should do that. And that's the way that I can maintain a kind of balance in my brain. And I achieve a lot in a lot of different areas of life. But it's because, yes, there is a self pressure and there is that wanting to chase, but there's also the reality that you cannot do it all. Like, there is a complete misnomer that says you can do it all, you can have it all. You can, but not all at the same time.
No.
And
Yeah.
once you let go of that sense of you should do this and you should do that and drink 90 million water liters a day, you just don't need that pressure. Because what happens, I think, when we're under pressure, your brain shuts down, you can't think straight, and then you cock up, and then it's just you're trying to repair something. So before getting to that point, be comfortable with where you want to go. And I think that for me has always enabled a balanced approach. For example, my career, I absolutely love my job. I love the industry of communication. I find it incredibly powerful, and luckily it sort of aligns with who I am and what I value. So communication, like talking, listening properly, understanding stuff, and then assimilating all that knowledge and then saying it in a more simple way, or using it to make a decision. And luckily that's what you kind of do at work and at home. So it really helps that you can have a true direction of what you want to do. So I had a conversation with a friend a few months back around, they were looking for a new job, and they were like, but you're really lucky. You've got your passion and your purpose all lined up as one. I was like, well, it's not really luck. Like, I struggle with people who see successful people doing things and go, oh, you're really lucky.
It
that
really
happens.
pisses me off, because
That pisses
luck
me off.
is hard work.
It's grit, it's determination, it's failure, it's the ability to say I got it wrong, and then you change your track. Like, what is it? Luck is when hard work meets good opportunity, or something. I don't know. There's the quote in there, Bobby, somewhere.
Excellent.
So I was a bit like, no, I do push back on that. And trust me, if I didn't have to work, I've got many other ideas that I would like to do, but that's because it's what drives me. So yeah, from terms of like your point, Bobby, around how do you get that balance, knowing where you want to go, asking for help, like for me is massive. I've got 3 children, so they're 9, 6 and 4. I did have 2 dogs. I've now only got 1 dog, which is very sad, and 2 cats. Married. I've got a big job, travel all the time, and I love it. And that's just fundamental to doing the job well, to be able to connect and understand with people across Europe. But my mum and dad are like the backbone of it, because they're around the corner. We moved to be closer to them. We've got a family, we have friends. I have an Excel spreadsheet that is like color coordinated and militant.
So Bobby's just done a big fist pump just for those people who can't see, because Bobby loves the spreadsheet as well.
And it got to the point where I updated it this week and printed off extra copies to put on the children's bedroom doors, because they've got to help themselves too. And I was actually laughing with one of my team, and she's like, "Oh, I've just done my spreadsheet." And I was like, we're onto something here. So we emptied out all like the detail, saved it as a template, and shared it around our parents' network.
Can you share it with me too? Maybe not
Yes,
not for kids, because I'm so disorganized. Spreadsheets make me nervous, but actually I'm looking for tools to help me become better organized. So
I like spreadsheets. Like, my level of sophistication with a spreadsheet is knowing how to format a cell. And I work with people who literally can make magic on spreadsheets. But I was like, right, I've got to get a grip and being organized. And like I said, like being a chaser, it's like, I just want to do that a bit better. I want to make sure that that's right. And for me to make that a bit better and that's a bit right comes down to, I would say, control, like a hands up control freak. And that talks to my thing around being responsible. Like, if you're going to be responsible, you've got to control it and do everything you can to make it not fall over. And then you can then let go, and it goes into the lap of the gods, or, you know, somebody else's execution of it.
Can I just go back to one thing? Because, you know, the organization element I completely get, but I think one of the really important things that you said was letting go of should. And so, sorry, Bobby, if I stole your time, if you were about to say that.
No. Go back to what I was going to say later.
Okay, because I think it's weirdly, it's something that I've been discussing with my therapist quite a lot recently in terms of managing my mental health in a fairly traumatic work environment. And we will talk about it in another episode. But I do think that this, you know, I've let go of a lot of shoulds, and I've had to let go of a little bit of control as well, which is, I think all three of us probably are self-confessed control freaks. But the letting go of the should and trying to find this balance, this genuine balance, rather than, you know, doing it all, and actually sometimes just getting up and going, you know what, I'm really not feeling, as you said, not feeling the fizz today. I'm not feeling the healthy eating today. I'm not feeling the focus. Bobby's really into this, and I've learned loads from her in terms of this somatic awareness. Mindfulness is the right, bodyfulness. Bodyfulness, is that a word? Maybe it is now. If you can have Gexpert, then I can have bodyfulness.
I allow you to make up words.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So Gexpert, bodyfulness, to just go, I'm not feeling this today, and that's been a really, really, you know, probably overstating it to say life-changing, but I'm not sure it is. It is life-changing because it has completely released me from a lot of the things that I was trying to desperately hold on to in terms of my idea of this balance, doing everything, and just going, no, I need to sleep. Actually, you know what? My focus now, my priority at this moment is to get sleep, or to eat, or to hydrate, or to relax, or to do whatever work it is that I need to do. But I think it's a really powerful thing that we don't often recognize, this letting go of trying to do everything, and the should thing, I think, is really important.
I think that there is so much external pressure to nail everything. Like, we come from a culture of total hustle. Look at my perfect Instagram life. Then you start to look at things and read things that tell you you should let go of things. And it's highly ironic, because then you're trying to understand how it is that you get this balance. And back in 2023, we had an amazing work thing went on. We did a massive rebrand of the business. I delivered my first conference for my business now. And it was super stressful. And alongside that, the rebrand, we built new websites, intranets. I was building a team. And we decided to move. So, and my daughter started school. So they're all quite big things. So when I was looking and thinking about my burners, I was like, I was really firing on everything. And I only look back on it now and go, I'm not quite sure how I did it. And I think that we have a super deep pool of resilience. I think that helps, that you just can keep going so long as you know it's finite. You can't keep going at that all the time. So that's where, I think balance is a bit of, I said it, a bit of a misnomer, in that you can surge and you can give it your all so long as you know you are going to have to pay that back in the next few weeks or the next few months. And that for me also gives me a bit of mental freedom, in that, okay, so I haven't done my yoga today, or I haven't read my book, or whatever it might be, and that's okay. But what I also do is, and it's this brilliant expression, that we're all juggling balls, and you've just got to work out which ones you're allowed to drop, and the ones that drop, just don't let them be the glass balls, let them be the rubber balls that just bounce back up. So like, I look at my children's logistics spreadsheet, and Friday nights for us are like a lot. And last week, my littlest one, he just started reception. He is shattered and he had a horrible cough and just needed to go to bed. So I was like, do you know what? We're not doing clubs tonight. I called it. I said, we're not going to football. No one's going to Stagecoach, and we're going to go home, have an early night. And it was the best thing for everybody, because, their acting career or their football career is not going to be impacted by not going to one club. But Absolutely. The benefit is massive from getting home, having a nice bubbly bath and going to bed. That knowing which one you want to drop.
You're also modeling, right? You're also modeling for your kids, because I do think that there's huge amounts. I mean, I don't have children, but I have a lot of friends who do. And I see there's huge pressure on children for all of these clubs, etc., etc. And actually for the parents to put things into perspective and go, you know what, one missed thing is not going to make a difference, and let's look after ourselves. I think it's also a really, really important parenting message, as well as a leadership message for when we're managing teams, to model that time where you go, you know what, we need to take a break.
Yeah. Can I pop in on that? Because I think if I wrap all the way back, I'm not going to try and get back to whatever I was going to say from before. It's fine. No, it's fine, because this is a lovely strand. But I want to make sure that we keep hold of the word relationship, as that's the segment. And we are talking about relationships. But I think the thing that strikes me with what we're talking about, and it goes to the modelling point, Bridge, is that when we lose relationship with ourselves, which is to your point about what you're talking about with your therapist as well, Bridge, when we lose relationship with ourselves, it is very difficult to hold on to our relationships with others.
Absolutely.
So that all of the things that you're talking about, Lizzie, which I would also say, don't just live in your head. I'm bound to say this because of what I want to give to everybody about what else we can find going on. That pool of resilience that you talk about does not live in our brain. It lives in every part of ourselves, as to what we can actually count on for ourselves, but knowing when you're coming to the point where you're about to go to collapse. And so there's that element about what happens for us internally, but equally, if we're not in touch with that relationship, the chances of you may well have caught little E's cough and gone, we're not doing that tonight. But if you have gone into a place where you are disconnected, it's disconnected from everything else.
Yeah.
So that harnessing of who you are, actually, I think really changes our relationships with other people.
When you talked about that point of collapse, just after we did this thing in 23, I was tired, like physically tired, mentally tired, and I got a stress ulcer on my eye, which is a very random place to get it. And it was inside at the back in the cornea. It was the most painful thing. And I've had 3 kids and appendicitis and ouch. But this one, and I think it was because your immune system is down, you're run down, you rub your eyes when you're tired. Anyway, and I was like, oh, that's a warning sign to say, right.
It's the message. It's a message your brain won't have given you.
Yep. And that's it. And I just kind of cracked on and thought I can sleep, later on. But what I did is I went and I found a coach. And in 23, and we started off in the January, and that was amazing. Like, that was intense, because it was a real reflection back of, you're going at 100 miles an hour. If you look at that point, I met Dave, he moved in from the mountains to where I lived in Hampshire. Then we had a baby. Then we did a ski season in that maternity. Like it just went wild. And
Mad.
then I had 2.5 years later another baby. And then less than 2 years after that, another baby. So at one point I had 3 under 5. And I was still working full time. And then we actually, in this like journey of coaching, it was like, just slow down. And that's what my mum and dad always used to say when I was little: slow down, Lizzie, which kind of goes back to my chaser thing. And there's probably reasons that I don't know why that is my personality, but it is. But we actually stopped in 23, 24 to be like, who actually are you? Like, you know, your questions around how do you introduce yourself without a title? It's exactly that. What motivates you? Who is your true self? And once you can articulate that, and it might change from one month to the next because we grow and we evolve and we are not static beings, that becomes really helpful in creating balance. Because if what you're doing is not serving who you truly are, then question, should you be doing it? Does it feel right? Does it feel forced? And when you're in a fixed mindset and that forced, I've got to do it because I should, or because that's who I think I am, that's really tiring. And actually, when you start to go to that free flow, it's aligning to who I am. It doesn't feel like hard work, but you can do more.
Can I come in on that? Because I think that reinvention of self, it can be daily. It can be because something in the environment or the situation or the relationships have changed. And I think that if we're back to relationships again, as we evolve, as we are reinventing, of course, everybody else around us is doing the same. And you've got 3 littlies who are not going to take that long before we're heading into adolescence and then young adults and everything else besides. And there's that interweaving of keeping a sense of self as well as watching what selves they are becoming as well.
It's amazing. And it goes so fast, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I'm just thinking that in terms of that, there's your inner compass to make sure that you are staying, all these things that you're saying about staying aligned with yourself. I'm just wondering what that is like with being surrounded by beautiful children and Boozy and your work, you know, how that interweaves. Because I think that that's something that's so important from the relationship, and that every day is a new day in a relationship with
massively someone. And it's so true. And I look at how the children are growing and shaping and changing, and our relationship is constantly, it's so super solid as parents to children. But it is like there is a layer of quagmire and quicksand, because all of a sudden, you know, my 9-year-old, he wants more independence and more freedom. So we have to run and catch up with what he needs, whilst not just being completely led by that. But that relationship has to evolve and grow. And like, we've never done it before, and no one's ever lived your life before. So how do you know you're doing the right thing? And actually, that's when I come back to the point around like checking on your basics. Are you being kind? Are you being fair? And, you know, I go to that point around knowing your true self, because we have such a barrage of, you should be gentle parents, you should be fun parents, you should. And actually, sometimes the best thing is turning all that noise off and really looking at what's in front of you and saying, right, well, that doesn't work for that particular child. And the way we speak to William, our eldest, will be very different how we talk to Penelope, who is an entirely different kettle of fish, who is entirely different to the baby. He's not a baby, he's 4, you know.
Going to see, he will not be very pleased.
He's very grown up and can spell the word pat. So, you know, what he's nailing it.
He's completely gorgeous.
He's rather lovely. They are all rather lovely. And that's how we do it. But the point around relationship, and it is hard with your partner, and it is like the most brutal beat up when it's tough at home with the children because we're tired or we're ill or things are just not rolling smoothly, which is like normal. And you go, oh, I had this idea to be a wholesome apple baking, apple crumble and roast dinners, which is great, which we do. But sometimes that just doesn't work and we end up with a fish finger sandwich, and that's also fine.
Oh, fish finger sandwiches are awesome.
I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. I'd go with that.
But what that can do is you can then end up pitting yourselves against each other as the two grown-ups, because you think point A is right and he thinks point B is right. And actually you can rub each other up the wrong way. And that's not great, but that's also normal. And that's when you're like, right, we've got to stop. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And that's when I go a little bit into work mode and lean on my communication experience, because we're all communicators, but sometimes it's how do we actually talk about the real point rather than the I didn't like the way you said this and I didn't appreciate the way you did that. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is what we're going to do with screen times and devices that are just, the big issue in our house. So it's that trying to elevate out of it and not always just dive into the immediate issue, because that's really not it. And that comes down to a relationship point. Like, are you talking? Are you building together? Are you firing from the same cylinder? That's not the right thing. Singing from the same song sheet.
It means, we know what you mean. It's a really interesting point about the communication. And I think it's fascinating that you are a communication specialist and also talking about relationships makes complete sense, because I think communication, when we've talked about various seasons, we've gone through various things about leadership, and communication is key. And just before we started, we were chatting about how long I've been married to Mohammed, and I've always joked that, well, two things. One, that we're never together, and so actually that's why we survived. But secondly, when we first met, and for quite a long time in our early relationship, we were both having to speak a language that was not our native language to each other. And one of the things that I really genuinely, because I'm quite a hothead and he's very stubborn. So one of the things...
Good.
Yeah, well, no, obviously he needs to be. But I found that when we argued or when we were disagreeing, that you can't say the unforgivable thing. You can't say those awful, cruel things, those unforgivable things that you can never take back or that will genuinely hurt. You just can't say it, because you're having to translate everything. And so you really do have to think about, what is it I'm trying to say? And so that it really forces you to think carefully about what you're trying to say and how it will be understood. So we've had so many weird discussions about what raining cats and dogs means.
And whether or not you're a frog.
And whether or not I look like it, whether I'm a frog, yeah. A sexy frog, apparently, but
Nice.
Still a frog. And I found that really, really interesting to think about how we communicate. And now that Mohammed's English is much, much better, and there are times where I worry that we'll go into bad arguments. And as you said, there are some things that you're just like, am I just being like really petty? Do I really, really want to have an argument about this in French? No, I don't. And so you just don't have it. Or our translation would be so fucking ridiculous that we just both end up laughing. No. And then you realise that it is just ridiculous. And so we move on.
The interesting thing for me when you talk about that is that it's not always about the spoken language. So it's not always about the fact that you're talking in, French. Sometimes even in a native tongue, you can be talking at different purposes. I'm talking at this point here and they might be talking at that point there, and you can both be right and you can both be wrong, but there is a delta here. And actually the trick is like, how do you manage that? And the other thing, when you were talking, I was like, I learned this trick about the stimulus response gap, and it's probably something that you already know and use, but it's like, if there's been a situation or someone's really annoyed you and you're about to have a fight, or even, road rage, prime example, someone's just cut you up.
Yeah.
Like, our natural reaction is to be like, boom, yeah, me. But actually, if you give yourself a gap, and that could be 1 second, It could be a whole morning, it could be a week, and you come back and you will have a better answer, or you won't even need to give an answer. And creating that stimulus gap is something that I have used as a tool for balance. How am I being balanced in my relationships? At work, with my colleagues, with my children, with my friends, with my families, not just jumping in. Because as I said, like, I could react really quickly because that's the right thing to do, because that's what we expect. But sometimes just being like, I'm just going to not reply, or I'm just going to walk away, or I'm just going to go and put the washing on, or I'm just going to go and do something else. That gives me a gap to go, hang on, does my response align to who I want to be? Does it serve me in the right way? Is it serving mindset, or am I just triggering? And that helps me be quite balanced, because Bobby helped us with our most recent conference, and there were points in there where you could really jump in and see how we have got so many wonderful languages in our business, and actually having that start, gap, response is so helpful, because everyone can then catch up with your thinking. You then create a wonderful dynamic because people are measured, and we have time. Like, that has been a real thing. And just on the time point, and we talked about this earlier on, I don't know if it's too far back, but it's that sometimes you just need to take a break in what you're doing. And we factored in we had 300 people all in the same place, and the best thing we gave them, apart from wonderfully insightful strategy updates, but gave them time to connect with each other. And that was one of our...
You don't need a hefty timetable for that. No.
We just said one of the best things that we want to get out of this, one of the main things, is for our people to connect with each other, because you can get so much more work done to a better standard if you actually know a person, because you can be selectively vulnerable. You can just talk and actually find out who they are. And then guess what? You're more likely to pick up the phone and say, can I have some help? Or you create a balance.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you that, because the two of you know me quite well, that I never react hot-headedly in any way, shape or form.
Sure, Bobby.
Your nose is growing so long.
I was about to say categorical lie. So, but the communication point and the language and everything else besides, I also like to think of the connectivity of the what's not said. So I think that, God knows where, but in a previous episode, we were talking about when I was attempting to do something of the pause and reflect element that you're talking about, Lizzie, but was busy slamming kitchen cupboards shut by myself. So rather than actually saying anything really horrible to Ash, it was clear that I was really fucked off about something because I was slamming. I'm absolutely fine. Slamming doors, so that it can be quite in your face like that, or it's more oblique. And it's the reading those elements. And again, when we're talking about children where they haven't got those, that difference in language when you're trying to work out what they actually need, versus a different language where you're trying to articulate something and it's not mashing, or someone behaving like a tit, this is me, and going off and doing something rather than saying what's really going on. And I took thousands of years, and I'm probably still there now, that because there is this heat in me, which is a strength a lot of the time, but it sometimes gets rather overplayed, that I know that I spent years going, I don't think I will be able to have this come out of my mouth and not offend somebody or hurt somebody. So I'm going to swallow it back and I'm not going to say it, and it would burn me. Never mind burning on a hob, it was burning inside. So I've had to learn to find ways of having it come out. I think, but that's when you're in relationship with somebody, because when I think about first taking on children who, of course, in the first instance weren't actually my own, but I had become a step parent. And Ash really kindly, if I think about it now, although I didn't take it like this at the time, never saying in front of them, you really cocked that up, didn't you? Something to do with them. He'd never say it in front of them. But I had to go through that, being thoroughly affronted and upset because I hadn't got it right, because I was so desperate to always having got it right. And I don't get it right very often at all. But then having to learn to articulate how to say sorry, God help me, that was probably the hardest thing in the world. But that whole level of progress of how we can be in relationship, as you are saying, if we don't go or slam a kitchen cupboard first, I really feel that. And yet I still don't get it right some of the time. And I'm just wondering if there are moments, but how you then retract.
How you
so
get back from
it'd be lovely if all of the time I was saying, yep, I'm with Lizzie, I can do the pause and reflect and I always get it right. I try to practice it. Sometimes it goes awry. And I'm just wondering if that is the same for you.
Because we're not like robots. Like, that's human nature, right? We're never the same. And if the world could do that and go, I'm going to pause and reflect and come up with the most insightfully diplomatic, all needs are all met from everybody, well, then I'm in the wrong job. But that's not the reality.
It would be very boring.
And also, it's just not real. But also, it's like, of course you don't get it right, But sometimes it's like, I think certainly in my relationship, there'll be times when I'm just able to say sorry. And it might not even be a sorry. It might be a, do you want a cup of tea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that might be it. Or I got that wrong. Or whoops. Or do you want me to make dinner? So it might be as like pathetic as that.
I think that's very powerful because it's what I do because I can't use the S word.
But sometimes, and I reflected on this one before I said, I think sometimes I have been guilty in the past of saying sorry too much. Because you are a peacemaker. Like, I don't like conflict. But what I've learned as I've got much older and wrinklier is sometimes you need that, because otherwise you don't reflect your true, and it goes back to your true self. So actually, if you're not sorry, don't say you're sorry, because it's not authentic. And then it just kind of makes it an acceptable, look, I apologize. And I think, it goes back to when I described myself as being responsible. Sometimes you take on the responsibility of how other people feel too much, because you want everyone to be happy. You want it to be a perfect meeting or a perfect party or a perfect relationship. And sometimes, you know what? It's okay to not say sorry if you don't think you're wrong. If you talk it through and you can say, look, I really appreciate your view. I disagree. And that's okay, because sometimes it's not just that. I think there are ways to do that, not in a dogmatic, like, I'm right, you're wrong, or not. It's a kind way of doing it, and doing it in a respectful way. That's really important to me. But I've just wrote that down. I think that there is an element of courage, like being okay to have a hard conversation is okay. And sometimes it's that just got to put your brave pants on and lean into it. Because if you don't, Bobby, it goes to your point, it just festers in here. And then that's, then you've got to have another vial of Botox. That's the situation.
But there's a book, isn't there, about not being cruel to be kind, but it's, Brené Brown says being clear is kind. So she's very much about, we have to be honest. And sometimes, as you say, we're trying to protect people. And so we think we're being kind by not being honest about stuff.
Yes.
But there's
it's the radical candor.
That's it.
You talked about this in your last podcast about people are so kind that actually
ruinous empathy.
Yeah. And that, I think, that's as bad as, when we hear about being toxic positivity, everything's fine. Do you know what? Sometimes things are going to be really shit, and that's perfectly okay. Because I've been around people, and I'm not in touch with her anymore, but everything was fine, and it was like slightly hysterical.
Yeah.
Whereas inside, everything was crumbling, and it really wasn't fine. Now, that for me is like quite a toxic positivity, because if that is the situation, then you're not really seeing what's in front of you. And if you're not really seeing it, you can't really change it, or you can't really affect change. You might not be able to change the situation, but your response, you're kind of on a bit of a black economy. You don't know what really is happening.
Yeah. And I think that's the same for work and at home.
Yeah.
When it's, hang on, let's just stop and talk about what's really going on here.
Yeah. It's never about the spilt milk. It's about the fact that there's something else going on. There was a point in your podcast, the lady who's the artist,
Sam Barnes,
and she talked about humor and like having fun in a relationship, wherever that relationship, with children. Gonking around with your kids is possibly one of the most fun, liberating, calibrating thing you can do, like having a proper belly laugh. I think we forget that you can have fun in things. Like, certainly I feel like I've packed in a lot in the last 10 years from a balancing children, career, houses, animals, whatever. Sometimes you forget to have fun, and that's when you go back and go, I used to be a hoot. So,
I used to be a hoot. I love that.
And I think there are points to it. And I'm super lucky in my work. I've got an amazing team. And there will be days where, when you get the church giggles and you can't stop laughing at something.
Yes.
And it can be absolute nonsense. But they are the days where you're like, I've had a great day at work today. And it sets the tone for when you come home and you're like, and then this happened. And then you're like, you really should have, you kind of needed to be there. But and then it's like absolute rubbish when you're like, and then she said this and he said that, and you're like, no, moments pass.
I remember so much during COVID, Ash would come in and go, what the hell has been going on? Have you been doing any work at all? Because I would have been just in like raucous laughter, because it would just get completely inane about the most inappropriate stuff with my poor managers. But you just needed that level, because the world had gone to shit and you really needed to have a good howl.
You do, you really do.
I got lots of work done.
I was in a meeting recently, and it was mainly men, because obviously I work in security, and my boss was giving a lecture about something. And so I work in the Middle East, so a lot of the staff are Palestinian. And he said something along the lines of size doesn't matter. And I can't help it. I'm such a child. If someone says melons in front of me, I will start laughing. And I'll just try really hard. And I'll be walking past and I go, oh, look, melons. And then I'll just burst out laughing. And I was trying so hard. And he looked at me. I was just laughing. And I said, I'm sorry, just ignore me. Just ignore me. And I'm sniggering in the back. And then every single guy looks at me and starts laughing as well, because they're like, what is wrong with her? And everybody in the room was just pissing themselves laughing. And I'm saying, I'm sorry, that was so inappropriate. I apologize. And my boss is going, what is wrong with you? And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't help it. But
at least he didn't ask you to explain yourself.
I had exactly the same situation yesterday in this team development thing. I said to this guy, what are you laughing at? Because we'd been making some prompt cards for this exercise that we were doing. And somehow I had written on this thing and not really thought about it was, and what do you do to follow through? I was like, oh my God. And it just went on all day. Anytime we were talking about something, well, you know, you've got to make sure that you've got a good follow through. I was like, just stop it. So it was, these prompt cards have gone back into they said, no, we're taking the prompt cards with us because they're so useful. It's like, please don't show them to anybody else. But God's sake, yeah, late. Ha ha ha.
It's true. I think that fun, it just comes across. I was just looking around the other elements of the wheel, and it does all link in, doesn't it? It's so hard to be able to be like, right, this area of my life is kicking ass. It's amazing. And the rest of it, it's balance. Yeah. What is balance though? That's the real thing.
We have said though with the wheel that you can't ever get it to be perfect. I mean, it would be a Flintstone wheel with bits jolting out all over the place, because as you're rightly pointing out, there are days when nutrition and health and moving your body matters more than something else in the wheel. So I don't think that, because, you know, Bridget, I'm really looking forward to when we actually conclude this series and she has got herself to a 10 in every single aspect of it.
I mean, I love that. Was my aspiration. But it's a splat now. You described it as a splat. I think that the life splat is better than a life wheel.
That's true.
The splat of life.
But I suppose it's just that. It's that awareness, right? Like I sometimes do the mental checklist in the shower. I'm like, do the children have everything? Then each one of them working it back from the end of the day backwards. Check, check, check. That's good. Everything good with the animals. Everything good at work. What I need to do. And it's that awareness. Where are we on all the stuff to do with the house? Birthday parties, have we seen these people? And I always think that my relationships with my friends were the ones early on when the children were really little that were the ones that got neglected, because you just didn't have the time. But there is this one book that I've been reading that was recommended by a very dear friend. It's called Meditation for Mortals. And it's brilliant, and it's a chapter a day. And the one point was, sometimes stop overthinking things, just do it. Like somebody who wants to become really good at meditation, they'll obsess about getting the right soundtrack, the right seating, the right temperature, the right clothes. If you didn't do all of that and just sat for 5 minutes, then you've done it.
Yeah.
And then you've done another one. And then you just stop overly trying to program it and have the right coordinating top and bottom and hair, and just do it. And then you're one step closer to doing it. So that was one of the things I have tried to adopt now. It doesn't all have to be perfect. You know what's going on in your life. Like unsighted things are a no-go for me. I hate being unsighted on stuff. But sometimes it's just do the do. Like just pick up the phone to your mate. Like you don't have to plan an amazing weekend away. Just have a chat. And that's something that I need to be better at doing. I know that for a fact. And there's always time.
So we are really needing to be close to the end, which is a real shame. We're going to have you back on again, Beuzeval, because there's so much we could talk to you about. And you know this as a question about that younger self element to it. So you talked about being a chaser and slowing down, and this is what your parents were telling you when you were younger. But I'm wondering what you, as your younger self, would be saying to yourself today that you feel that you need to keep alive for yourself in your splat of life, wheel of life, whatever we want to describe it as.
Be brave. I would also say to my younger self, I'm super proud of you. Like, I think that, and I am proud of my younger self and of myself now, but be brave. Like, the easy options are not always the best options. And sometimes being uncomfortable with it really puts you in a new place, and then you go on from there. So yeah, I'm proud of you, and be brave.
Love that. Bridge, any final words from you?
No, I'm just agog for your quote.
Oh, don't be like that. It's been really difficult because I had no idea quite where we were going to get to in terms of relationships. I gave myself a few to go on, but I think that the one that seems to spring to mind mostly from all the stuff that Lizzie has shared with us today is from Laura Vanderkam, who writes a book called I Know How She Does It. And the quote is, there's time for everything that matters if we're honest about what matters.
Nice one.
Yep. Absolutely bang on.
Thank you.
Bang on.
Well done, Bobby. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lizzie. It's been really lovely to meet you, well, virtually, and to chat. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I love you, Lizzie.
It's been super good.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's where we'll leave today's conversation, with the reminder that juggling the needs of our family relationships isn't necessarily about balance, but fully understanding that we need to focus on what really matters rather than managing everything at the same time. As always, thank you for listening to More Than a Lumpy Jumper. If you've been enjoying the season, please subscribe, share it with someone who's juggling too many things, and take a moment today to reflect on what your body is telling you it needs. And next week, it's just the two of us as we wrap up this season of the Wheel of Life, or now better known as the Splat of Life. We're going to reflect on what we've learnt from our cohort of Gexperts. Yes, it is now a word, apparently. What's landed for us personally and what we're taking forward into our own wheels, our own lives and our own reinventions. A moment for us to begin to reflect on the close of the year. Not just for ourselves, but maybe for you too. Join us for Being Complete-ish, a conversation about integration, insight, and what it means to live a life that feels balanced, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours.